Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Just coming back from a long 5-day retreat at the Kripalu Center and just had a wonderful time. See some of you who were on retreat with me. It was so lovely to be with you. Okay, let's just close our eyes for a couple minutes. Feeling into that which is awake, that which is present, that which is carefree. Carefree. And so what is here that is already soft and relaxed and carefree? What is here already that's not judging, not commenting, but is simply awake? And can you step into that awakeness fully? Can you put the costume of ego down? The old story, the old me, the old whatever it is. And join me in being the one who is awake and carefree. The one who is childlike and innocent. You allow this innocence to expand into the places in the body that are tense, that are struggling. And softening, softening, softening. And I invite you to be curious, genuinely curious about what is here. Curious about your divinity. It seems like all day long, most people are engaged with their thinking mind and all of that commentary. If you put the commentary down and look at the space, the presence in which the commentary arises, like what is your presence? Your presence. This one right here. What is your presence actually like? Beyond attention, beyond thought, like what is the very fabric of your presence? What is it like? Can you get to know that? Can you focus in on that? Can you feel that, experience that, identify from this place? Can you be what you are? Can you be what you are? And so, yes, welcome to Satsang. So Satsang is a place where we together explore the truth. And so if you have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand. I have a number of questions. I think I might just jump into them tonight. One thing that happened on retreat, we were at the Kripalu Yoga Center in Massachusetts, incredible land. It had some just like soft, rolling mountains. Coming from Colorado, it's hard to call these mountains, but they were some soft, rolling mountains with a beautiful lake and gardens and trees. And when I was there, the land, the very land itself, was alive and speaking to me. The center was an old seminary for Jesuit priests, and in a funny way, when I was walking down the halls, especially at night, before and after the teaching sessions, some of the old priests, the ghosts of the old priests were hanging out in the hallways. And it was just something just to see them still hanging out in this holy place. And I was just curious about, they were just still floating around. I wasn't attached in any way to seeing this type of thing. I went to the center just being radically open. And I can remember in a number of the sessions, I was sitting there waiting for the grace to come down from above. But there were a number of times when the grace came up from below, from the earth itself, just pouring into my legs, into my feet, into the pelvis, into the participants in the room. And again, I just invited everyone to be curious about, well, what is this and what is happening? What is happening in yourself in this moment, on this land? It's remarkable when you are radically open, what you begin to feel and experience and know. You begin to see that life is speaking to you. And for those who are spiritually awake, life can speak to you very clearly. For those of you who are asleep, life may have to scream at you to get your attention, and you still may be busy, is lost in your head. Lost in your head. So being awake means that we listen to the fullness of life. We listen and we experience the fullness of life. We become life. To not be awake is to be in a state of me, guarded from life. Me guarded from life. And so the first question I have is about this. Someone from the retreat said, Craig, the question in short is, he wrote me a long email, but then he summed up his question into one sentence for me. What does it mean to be both radically open and clear in your own discrete autonomy? So there's a funny thing that happens on the spiritual path. We learn about this thing called surrender. And as you surrender, basically you're giving up your egoic identity, egoic identification, you're giving up every aspect of the ego. And the ego, just to sum it up in a short definition, is the fight or flight response. So we're letting go of all the ways the fight or flight response shows up in our consciousness. So that's being guarded and defended. And the best example of this in the modern age is when someone challenges your politics. When someone challenges your worldview and your, say, your scientific orientation on what happened the last couple of years. I can't even really speak about it because YouTube is so sensitive in this way. So even YouTube is guarded. Even YouTube is guarded, where there's certain things we are not allowed to speak about. Because things can get so nutty right away. And people at Google know this. Like, things can get real nutty real quick. So we're going to try to, in a sense, like guard this conversation. And so I invite you to look into yourself, like, what are the places that if someone brings up this topic, that immediately we go into a hyper sense of rationality that's really just a bunch of emotionality. And we're calling it science, or we're calling it conspiracy, or we're calling it this, or we're calling it that. So whether you are happy or really upset in the last election, like the great question around being awake is, can you be open and curious about what is happening here in this moment without being emotional? And so many of us on the path, as soon as we think about being open, we say, okay, I surrender everything. Now, some people are so utterly proficient at surrendering and surrendering and surrendering that they become ripped wide open, and then they feel everything. They feel everything to the point of it being debilitating. And maybe some of you know what I'm speaking about. It's like, I'm open, I'm open, I'm open. I've surrendered, I've surrendered, I've surrendered. I've given my will away to this, to such a degree that like I'm just drooling on myself with no directionality. I'm just waiting for God to tell me, God to move me. But all God does, and often when we get into this state, is just continually overwhelm us with feelings, with experiences. Sometimes we're overwhelmed by like psychic forces and entities and all this type of thing. I hope this is making sense, but this is it's a great question. And I see this so often in my one-on-one work is as people become really good at surrender. So good that they can no longer function. They can't make a choice. So the question is, what does it mean to be both radically open? Okay, so we've established radically open. And then the second part, and clear in your own discrete autonomy. And so this is the challenge. Can you be open and then choose to live from the truth? So in order to have autonomy, you have to get in touch with your power in your hara, in your solar plexus, and choose to act from your truth. And in this case, your truth and God's truth should be quite similar, quite similar. And so eventually, like at the end of the path, we are not just a ripped open person who is unfunctional. We are a person who is radically open and who's highly functional. I'm a highly functional human being. As a father, you have to be really functional. To be married in a relationship, you have to be really functional. If I just laid on the couch, I was just open, 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 surrendered, 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 and continually in states of samadhi and processing and letting go, eventually my wife would take the child and leave. Like, you don't do anything. You just sit there. You don't do anything. And so sometimes spiritual people, they get drunk on being open, or they get lost in being open. And so the thing about my teacher, because I was with him, at least 6 days of the week, he didn't let me get away with any of that type of nonsense. We had a retreat center that we were busy running, and it's like, he couldn't have his head student, his head disciple, non-functional. Greg, get to work. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. Bring your consciousness into your feet, into your belly. I'm not paying you to sit there and do nothing, Greg. And he wouldn't have to say that to me. He'd just look at me and I'd say, okay, get back in my body, get back in the form. Now, of course, there are times on the path when we are non-functional for a period of time. A period of time. Of course, we go through big stages, and sometimes we get ripped wide open through the process of spiritual awakening, and things get a little discombobulated and disoriented for a period of time. But eventually we have to bring our consciousness back into our feet, back into the hara, back into the solar plexus, and we have to choose. And so this is a skill of mastery of being radically open and simultaneously radically here, radically practical. I'm a very practical guy, incredibly open individual, and very practical. And so sometimes with the path of surrender, people get themselves in trouble and they just let go of everything, including the practicality. And then at some point they're being, evicted, from their home or their relationship or their family. And so in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this beautiful image of the dakinis. So the dakinis are like a female goddess. And they have one foot, like in lotus posture. And then the other foot is on the earth. And then their hands, often are in some form of mudra. So the mudra is showing their outward divine expression and transmission into the world. And that is a choice. If you look at their eyes, the eyes of the dakini, they're very focused, very clear, very intentional. They're not just like, lost, like a hippie in the park. Like, that's not what the path is about. And one of there's two places often people go with surrender. Is often they become so surrendered, they become like a hippie in the park. You're just in the clouds, like no connection to any responsibility or autonomy or what's that word that people are using now so much? Accountability. Or they become radically unfunctional, non-functional. And again, I want to really clarify that there's times on the path when we let go into states of non-functionality so that something big can come and take root within us. But after that thing has taken root within us, God is expecting us to learn how to drive the car. It's like, how do you drive the car of non-dual spiritual awakening? And you must learn how to drive this car. You must learn how to live in the world. Now, some people will say, well, Ramana Maharshi, he didn't learn how to live in the world. It's like, he lived at an ashram, and he had a team of monks and disciples who took care of things. And then, if you really get to know the life of Ramana Maharshi, you see he actually did get down to business. He did. He helped with the planning and the building of the ashram, helped with the daily activities of the ashram. And he would spend a lot of time in deep states of samadhi and freedom. And even to this day, that ashram is still functioning because he had his feet on planet Earth. He had his consciousness here. He attended to both realms simultaneously. And so this is something we all must learn how to do, is how to be in both worlds at the same time. And the more you're able to be in both worlds at the same time, you'll come to discover that there's only one world. And it's all happening here. And so, my friend, in order to have clear, discrete autonomy, you have to find your power, you have to find your choice. Now, the shadow in this question, the rub in this question is it all circles around safety. When we're surrendered, if we feel safe, we quickly and easily step into our power. And we quickly and easily discover our autonomy. If we surrender in a deep way and we don't feel safe the entire time and we are disconnected from our power, you will very quickly find yourself non-functional. Find yourself overwhelmed. So ultimately, this comes down to you deciding that you're going to take charge of your life. You're going to choose the truth over choosing fear. People don't like it when I say this, but most people unconsciously choose fear and are literally unconsciously attached to fear and being overwhelmed. Most people find that it's easy to surrender. Let's see if I can figure out how to say this clearly. To surrender and become, just be, rest as a fearful person, which is crazy. Instead of surrender and choose to step into their power. Most people just fall into this habit of just surrendering You say, I can't, I can't, I can't. It's too much. I can't handle it. You can handle it. You're outliving it in every moment with every breath. You are outliving it. And so can you find your power? Can you choose your power? Can you live from power? Can you choose to live from the truth? Which basically means, can you choose to do your work in the world, in your life? Like all of us choose to feed ourselves. And I'm going to assume we all choose to brush our teeth. So can we also choose to say no to fear? Stand up to fear and smile at fear. To actively smile at fear. But most people are just laying down, and I did this, wanting God to do it for us. And God will look at you, and God will look at Jesus, and God will say, Jesus, you must carry the cross. You must carry the cross. But imagine if Jesus just lay there, I don't want to carry the cross. I don't want to carry it. And just laid there. Well, those mean, whoever the torturing Roman guards, I think, just keep beating them, saying, you're going to pick that cross up. And life will do the same with us. If we don't choose the truth, life will pile on the pain. And that's just kind of how life is. That's not life according to Craig. That's life according to, to God. If you don't choose the truth, God has to pile on the pain, because pain will steer you in the direction of truth. And so can we be surrendered and also empowered? Yes. But if you are surrendered and disempowered, you're just letting go into a state of being egoically fearful. So you want to surrender and be empowered through choosing the truth. And sometimes the very way of getting over fear is joining with fear, stepping into it, stepping into the feeling, the experience of fear itself. Just to step fully into it. You know, like the first time I built a house, like framed up a house, it was very scary. Like when you build walls on the ground, like say the first story, not so scary. But when you have to climb up on top of that wall, and so a 2x4 is, it's a board that's actually 3.5 inches wide. It's not even actually 4 inches wide. It's 3.5 inches. That's about this wide. So I want you to imagine standing with your 2 feet on a wall that's this skinny and walking, like walking on the top plate. So it's like walking on the top of the wall before a floor has been built. If any of you are in a 2-story house, there's a good chance it's a 2x4 wall, especially if it's an older house. And a guy, a fella, or a crew, someone, a team of individuals had to stand up on that 2x4 wall and learn how to work on that skinny little wall. And then there were some people on the ground handing up boards, which are called floor joists. And then you have to stand on that wall, and you have to take that big board, and that board's going to go from one end of the wall to the other end of the wall. So you have to be able to swing that around and have it land on the other side of the wall. And you have to nail those all into place upright, 16 inches on center. before you put the actual floor on. So you have to do all this work. And so when I was doing this type of work, it was really scary. The first time I did it, first couple hours. And one of my first bosses, he was 70 years old. He was a 70-year-old man. He built something crazy. It was like 70 homes every summer in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He just there's only one Albuquerque in Albuquerque. That's all he did is he just frame up as he was so quick. It'd be every couple of days they'd have a new home and he'd just run circles around me on this skinny little top plate. And at some point I said, okay, he can do it. I'm up here peeing my pants. I have to do it. I have to face this fear. I have to learn how to walk and not fall. Not fall, because if you fall, you're going to break your hip, your legs, or your head. And so sometimes we just have to jump into the experience of fear. If we're going to survive on the path, we have to jump into it and overcome it. We have to jump into it and breathe through it, feel through it, and comfort our own self. Comfort. Keep in mind, nowhere am I here saying repressing, but we jump into the fear and we comfort ourselves simultaneously. So I'm breathing deeply. I'm shaking a little bit. I'm breathing more. I'm shaking. I'm breathing more. In the olden days, this was called exposure therapy. People who were terrified of getting on an airplane, they'd put them on a plane for 3 minutes just to sit there, just sit on the plane, buckle your seatbelt, take a couple deep breaths, have a little bit of a panic attack, and then, hey, we're going to get off the plane. We'll come back tomorrow. We're going to try again. We'll stay for 10 minutes next time. And so through facing our fears, we overcome them. We grow in strength, grow in power. Now, of course, we never do this in an abusive setting. There's always the trauma. People say, but what about? We don't do this in a setting where you're going to get hit. You do this in a setting where you're going to grow. So in this case, with the question, how do we remain radically open? Good, check. Many of us can do that. So we're feeling, we're opening to our experience, we're not running away. All the energies of fear or sadness or anger are moving through the body. And then we turn with awareness and we face that very thing and we breathe into it. And this is where we make the trauma people happy. We're self-soothing the parts of us which are afraid. And it's you, the adult you, the awake you in the room is self-soothing, the one who's frightened. And eventually the place within you that's frightened begins to believe in and have faith in the good adult in the room, the healthy adult, the awake one. But if the awake one is not here, is not present, sometimes that's the case. The people can become very proficient at letting go. But there's no one here, no adult here that's awake. I didn't say an adult here who's in their egoic consciousness. Often there's that one. Who's saying, I'm overwhelmed. I can't handle this. I can't do that. That's not going to help. Imagine if your pilot on the airplane was like, I'm overwhelmed. We're way too high. I can't do this. It's like everyone would be losing their minds on the airplane. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, co-pilot, can you take over? Can someone who knows how to fly this thing? So we need someone to be the spiritual adult and to choose And if you don't know how to do that, then you have to be like a new parent. So when you're 20 something years old, like I was, or you're 30 something years old, maybe you're 40 something years old, and you have your first baby. Like the first time you hold that baby, many of you might be kind of scared. Like, I'm still just a kid. I don't know how to do this. What if I mess it up? You know, a lot of people are afraid to fall asleep with their newborn baby in the bed. They're afraid, I'm going to roll over and crush the baby. It's like, are you just like a dead lump of potatoes? Like, you have no awareness in your body? Like, come into your adult self, trust, breathe, fail a little bit and realize you are okay and the baby's okay. And after we failed a couple times and you lived, you begin to realize, oh yeah, there is an adult here. There is. And so we need the spiritual adults to wake up and to take the steering wheel away from the one who's overwhelmed. And to drive the car, drive this vehicle in the direction of the truth while simultaneously soothing the one who's frightened. And so this is how we do it in response to this question of how do we stay open and clear in your own discrete autonomy? Discrete, distinct autonomy. So you bring the healthy energy of the Hara online, which says, I know who I am, and I know what my life is about. I know who I am. I am the awakened one. I know what my life is about. Maybe in this moment it's facing fear. Maybe in this moment it's helping heal the traumatized one. Being a good parent to the child within us. Okay. Nanette has a question. And so just would invite everyone, when we ask a question, it's short, clear, and direct. Sometimes people make me work hard to figure out what's the question here. So Nanette, are you here?
There we go.
Nanette?
Hi, good to see you. I I think my question is, which sounds like a third grader question, but where does love come from?
Where does love come from?
Where does love come from? Because I didn't have it forever, and now there's just love everywhere I look. And I'm just
listen, love is literally the fabric of your being. It's the fabric of life. But the reason many of us don't feel love is because we were disconnected from our heart, or because our heart was in so much pain and so much fear that we couldn't see it. And so often, like when people are confused about love, it's normally because there's a big veil on the heart. And when we have a big veil in our heart, we tend to live in egoic defensiveness, or we become hyper rational individuals, which is like a byproduct of being really defensive. And so love is literally the fabric of life. Like whatever you look at, like if you look through your heart, you see that everything is just gently vibrating. And that vibrational aliveness and softness is made of love. So love is in your heart. Love is the nature of God. Love is literally the nature of, let's see if I have some objects here to pick up. Like this Buddha, with the purple robes.
That's like party Buddha, disco Buddha.
It's like disco Buddha, but to me, it just the purple just showed just the vibrancy of life. And so when I saw it, there was all these. I was at this store in Encinitas and had all these Buddhas, and this one really spoke to me because it was so alive with color. So alive with color, and it just shined love through this brilliant purple. But I'll see love in a doorknob, or it's just in the grass and the earth and a garbage can. Like when your heart is open, you see love everywhere. Everywhere. When your heart is closed, then we have to go like chase and find love at a nightclub or a bar. It's like, what the hell what kind of situation is that? It's a terrible place to look. It's like, that's where it is. I think it's at the nightclub. It's like, really? The nightclub? You think that's where it is? Like, really? Or, people get crazy. They think they need to get drunk so that they can open their heart and connect with another human being. It's like, what planet are you on that is your path to opening the heart, is through a can of Coors Light? It's like, it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, the hoops we jump through. If we soften and open and trust, we see that love is actually, even in the hearts of people who vehemently hate us, that love is the thing that is actually keeping that one alive. And their hatred is just, they're just communicating to you, I am so disconnected from my heart. But when your heart is open, you can see the love of that being, even though they're being a lunatic. And I like to show these extreme examples because, again, love is the energy of life. It's the thing that animates life, the thing that makes life alive. And if you're in your heart and your heart is open, you begin to see that more and more and more. And so you're smiling, saying, okay, love is online now. Love was not online before. Love was always here in you, just shining through you. Just, you weren't so identified with it. And now you are.
I just think it's hilarious because it's like there's like a genuine question of like, how could I have possibly missed this?
Yeah.
It's like when you're like wearing your sunglasses on the top of your head and you've like spent 2 hours looking through your house for it.
Yeah.
So I'm genuinely curious, like how the fuck we miss it.
Well, this is one of the great problems with spiritual awakening is when you truly wake up, it's very hard for you to imagine or remember or put yourself back in samsara. It's very hard. Like if I try to imagine myself being a deeply divided human being, it's incredibly hard for me to imagine that. Like I can, kind of dig deep and find some memories of it, of course. Like, yeah, okay, I remember that. But even just, how did I really buy into guilt for so long? It's like, there's no way I could do that anymore. Because you're literally in a new state of being, a new way of being. And that other thing has fallen away. And so it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And you'll see, because God will show you, if you pick up a thought that's not true, you'll start to feel disconnected from love again. And so you know what it's like. You know what it's like to be in love. And so if you pick up a thought that's not true, you'll start to feel this love begin to feel further and further away. And so if you ever wake up one morning and say, where's the love? What happened to all that love I was feeling yesterday? Or what are we thinking? What are we believing that veiled our heart again? Yeah. So anyways, well, beautiful sharing. Anything else you want to bring forward?
No, I maybe just like sharing this sense of I think the mind gets confused and it can go back into its like police game where it's like, oh, love is this thing and is like all the happy, fun, juicy, good stuff. And then like what I'm seeing now, and then get rid of all the bad stuff, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing now is just like the absolutely unconditionally like joyous reception of all forms.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's why I brought up that hatred thing, is that love is everywhere. Love is radically inclusive. In fact, love is more interested in painful things than things that feel really good. Things that feel really good are just like, that's great. They don't need love. They just are it. And so love actually goes in the direction of pain. Love wants to fill that area too, wants to embrace that area too. Love is so expansive. It has an expansive quality to it. And so if there's any place where love is not, we should be very, very curious about that. Like, why can't I see love here? Oh, because I have a belief that this person shouldn't be this way.
Right.
I have a belief that it's all Ted Cruz's fault, or it's all Joe Biden's fault, or whoever the other politicians are. It's like it's their fault. It's, I'm not going to include them. I have to hate them for the next 4 years. It's like, that is not the way. Love includes all beings. All beings are love. Yeah. So anyways, thank you for sharing, Annette.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good to have you. Okay. I have a question, Craig, that you might be able to shed some light on. Why is it that after my Kundalini awakening, I'm overcome with fatigue and exhaustion? I have to point out that before the Kundalini awakening, I was diagnosed with ME or CFS, that's chronic fatigue syndrome. But this illness was getting progressively better for me until the awakening. Then it went haywire, and I feel myself being so overwhelmed with exhaustion that I'm basically bedbound. Yeah, so I'll say this, this is real common with people who are going through a true awakening. Often we have periods where we end up, I'm going to circle around and say something about functionality again, but I'm going to say it from a different perspective here. when God puts us in bed, and we feel exhausted. So exhaustion can be a couple of things. One, it can simply be purely a lifestyle thing that many of us, we exhaust our nervous system. And as we begin to wake up, God says, hey, that's enough. That is enough. You're not going to do that to your nervous system anymore. Like some people are on their phones or some form of technology all day long. They're constantly working, constantly busy, constantly drinking coffee. Like I know people drink like pots of coffee a day, like a whole pot. And sometimes it's pots with an S. And just throwing all this caffeine into one's nervous system, rushing here and there, living in a state of anxiety because of terrible parents or terrible bosses, or terrible trauma. And sometimes when we wake up, the light of awareness is shined on into our nervous system that's basically been fried. And so part of the awakening is going to be us laying in bed for a while and letting that nervous system recharge, rebalance. So that's one thing. Sometimes God takes our energy away from us, our will away from us. We're not really exhausted, but it's our will is gone. And so often we call ourselves depressed or exhausted or just we don't know what to do. And again, God just puts us in a bed and says, hey, I need you to be empty for a period of time. Sometimes God needs to put us in a healing crisis. Because what a healing crisis does is forces us, one, to heal, and two, to wake up to our true nature. Because when you're pushed into a state of having a healing crisis, you have to be very serious about learning how to love oneself. The last thing I'll say about this question is often Kundalini and or spiritual awakening bring up, like through the process of awakening, brings up old habitual karmic tendencies within the nervous system. And it brings them up so they can be fully seen, fully held, fully loved, fully supported. And this is really unfortunate. In a sense, like God is doing that, has done that with me this last year. You know, I've had this long illness for, you know, a year now. And there's just an aspect of my my immune system that's weak, and God's really shining a light on it and asking that it's addressed, and also asking that I take good care of my body, and also asking that I work a little less. And God has put me in bed a lot this last year. And during the quiet hours while I'm laying in bed, I spent a lot of time healing and taking care of this body and this one that's here. But through the process of me being exhausted, God has also been opening me to new realms of my own divinity that I didn't know about, taking me further along on the path. And that if I wasn't floored in a bed, I probably just would have been serving, you know, showing up more with individuals and just doing the work that I do. And God said, hey, we need to slow this down just a little bit, because there's some more things I want to unfold within your consciousness. So this last year has been a great exploration. Like some of you have been deeply concerned about my health. And I say, please don't, because God is doing something great in me. And God will use all kinds of things. Sometimes God uses silence in a monastery. But for those of us who aren't, who don't have a year or a 10-year long visit to a monastery in the next little bit, sometimes God says, how about I take your job away from you and I give you fatigue and I put you in bed and we're truly going to focus on the spiritual awakening thing. How about that? Because it's the only way. It's the only way. I'm going to get you to put down your phone, to put down your job, and put down you chasing, trying to complete yourself in a relationship. I'm going to make it so hard for you to be in any kind of relationship that you just have to be here alone with me. Me being God. Me being God. And so I smile because it's just a crazy thing that God does, but it's something that happens. Okay, here's another question. Hi, Craig. I experience a lot of nausea. And I remember in one of your teachings, you talking about how nausea can be related to energy like fear. The last 2 years, I've been releasing extreme amounts of fear, which has been my core wounding. Okay, I can say this as well, just I can connect like these two questions, that if we have an extreme amount of fear or anger in our consciousness and we've resisted it, there's a good chance we will be exhausted. There's a good chance we'll be exhausted. And if we begin to face this fear, there's a good chance we will continue to be exhausted, because that takes a lot of energy, effort, and work, and letting go. But eventually, the exhaustion will give way to relief. So nausea is often, like another word for nausea, if it's purely energetic, like if you didn't eat some rotten food or something. Nausea is often almost always psychosomatic, and it has to do with resistance. But sometimes, or often on the path, if we're consciously awakening, God will come into us in the form of light. And as light burns in our belly, it will feel like nausea. But really what it is light burning in our belly, waking up the solar plexus chakra, the third chakra, waking up the hara, getting us in touch with our power. And if we open to the nausea and say yes to it, we'll discover an incredible power and freedom and a divine fire within us. A fire that burns in the light of truth. And as that fire burns up all the karma in our belly, then we're just left with fire. Like when I feel into my belly, it feels like a lot of fire. It doesn't feel like there's any, karma there being burnt up. It just feels like fire. If there was lots of karma, like I used to carry a lot of guilt in my belly and in my throat, but a lot of it in the belly. And it was like this slow burn, like achy, nausea. It felt kind of disgusting and vomity. And as the light of truth burnt through it, then I was just left with a light and no more guilt. No more guilt. So go forward. Go forward on the path. Forward to God. Forward in the truth. Okay. So this week, starting Wednesday, the Kundalini group will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The meditation will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The satsang is going on from now forward will be 8 p.m. Eastern time. So do the time zone math, but it's real simple. We're going to start an hour earlier. Kundalini groups changing days and changing times, but satsang and meditation will start an hour earlier. So the question I'm going to leave you all with is, what is the truth that I need to step into, that I need to embody? What is the truth that life is asking me to step into and embody? What is the truth? Can you be open and embodied? Can you be surrendered to God's will, fully let go of your egoic nature, and stand in your divine truth? Not egoic truth, your divine truth. What is the truth that I need to step into and embody? So much love to each of you. Good night, everyone. See you soon.